practicality could be different than, the reality. So, I'm prepared with that. Okay. So, the eminent members, wherever you are, and my dear professional and fellow colleagues and young friends, a very good morning to you all. And I'm delighted to be here to discuss the topic which all of you are aware is basically the risk-based internal audit plan, focusing on what matters. Now, as I said, I'm delighted to be here to discuss, but to basically share my thought process on this particular topic. So please don't take it as a presentation, don't take it as a lecture, don't take it as a something like, Gyan being bata hai aise. So take it as, thoughts being shared with my all exposure experience which I had during last 3.5 decades of journey, professional journey. And at the beginning, let me just tell you, at any point of time, if you would like to ask any question, just raise the hand and maybe, take the mic and ask the question, because if you wait till the end, only one person will get a chance, and then that is the biggest risk. Okay, so here we start. Now, the topic is, the risk-based internal audit plan. So this is not something very exciting or not something very, out of the world. It is a very gisapita topic here. But then what matters is, focusing on what matters for all those my young colleagues or the mid-professional colleagues, and even for those experienced colleagues, because when we look at the boardrooms, when you look at the promoters, when you look at the top management, this is what is more important. It is not risk-based internal audit plan. What matters is, do you focus on what matters? And it all depends on your expertise, experience, need not be the professional qualification, what knowledge you gather, how receptive you are, or how your antennas are being toned to get what is basically, required to understand what matters and keep on delivering all that matters. So here we start, and before that, this is a disclaimer, as every movie has got a disclaimer, no animal or whatever, is being hurt in the process. So I don't claim this the originality of the concept. The concepts are well across, all available on the platform, and I have shared, taken it from that. So I'm just taking recourse of, taking the risk of somebody saying you copied from here and there. So this is my risk mitigation. Okay. As we go ahead, the entire topic broadly gets, like classified into 3 parts. It's a risk-based internal audit plan. So we must understand what is the risk management process. Also, the risk management process and internal audit, how best you can complement each other so that, we can see the both are not working in a different tracks. They have to travel on the same track like a patri ke do part hai, but the patri is the same one. And final part, focusing on what matters. So these 3, 4, 5, 6 areas which basically, I'll be discussing or sharing with you my thought process, and let us see how far we reach at the end of, where is the time? Maybe I'm not able to see the time. Oh, it's there. In the next 30 minutes. So the risk management process, I'll be taking initial couple of minutes just to take you through, not that you don't know, but this is what just to set the context right there. Now, the risk has got various definitions across all platforms. So some, one of the definition is mentioned here on this slide, but what I portray risk as anything and everything, the likelihood of any event which will have a negative outcome as compared to your objective. You can always have a better, or you can have, more fine defined, but this is what it means. So what it means is anything which will affect you very badly, and the likelihood of such event is a risk. Now, the entire risk management process, this is a theory now, will have these 4, 5 steps, right from identification, moving to examination, moving to prioritization, and there comes the most important thing, the risk mitigation and risk monitoring. These last 2 steps are more important things, because all your internal audit will, in a position to help you out there in the risk mitigation and risk monitoring. May not be in a direct way for most of the risks, but in an indirect way in so many ways. How to go about this, we'll see in the upcoming slides. Moving further. Now, the risk mitigation strategies, as I said in the previous slide, the risk mitigations and monitoring are the 2 important areas which need to be amalgamated with the internal audit plan, correct? So when I say risk mitigation strategies, these are generally understood to be the strategies. There could be so many sub-strategies as you work on practically in organizations, in functions, or wherever you are. So if you look at that, like internal audit plan, can they avoid the risk? No. Can they transfer the risk? No. Can they reduce the risk? No. Can they accept the risk? No. So what the internal audit plan has to do with the risk-based internal audit plan? I'm just explaining the theory. I'm not coming to the point, focusing on what matters. So when many a times in the life you will see, the first three steps are not so easy to do the things, and whatever is left out, many a time we'll have to accept with the risk, the way I accepted the risk at the beginning of my presentation. So the risk acceptance and what best internal audit can do to ensure that whatever risk you have accepted, how it is getting monitored and how the assurance is there that the accepted risk is getting monitored in the desired fashion, in the way it has been designed to be monitored. So a lot of DDs are there, but still though. So one has to understand, like for example, for all the risks which organization, functions, operations, plant, blah, 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 they have accepted, the internal audit can come to their help to ensure that for those accepted risks, how can I devise my plan to ensure that those risks are getting monitored and reported in a proper forum, so that if at all, if any change of guard is required, it can be taken at an appropriate level of management. Any questions at this stage? Good. Now, coming to the next element of this, like the risk management and the internal audit. Basically, I've got, 3-4 slides on this. So it has to complement each other. So it cannot be like risk management is a process there and the internal audit is a process there. So and it is essential to understand, because when we say risk-based internal audit, does it mean only the transactional risk? Does it mean only the operational risk? Does it mean only the strategies risk? No, it's a combination of all of them. And all that matters, when they are prioritized, they are being put into the particular internal audit clause to ensure that how they are getting monitored and reported. So that is what focusing on, what matters for the risk-based internal audit plan. Now, the risk-based internal audit plan, basically, it's, you can start. This is my version of, decoding the things, like one has to define the risk appetite to assurance kind of a thing. Now, all of you must be knowing what is risk appetite and what is the assurance, so I need not explain that. Moving further, now once the risks are identified, they need to be assessed also. Further, as I said earlier, in the some couple of minutes back, the risk mitigations and monitoring is more important. Now, the risk mitigation is a proposed action plan for the risk management and the mitigation. Now, here comes, the focusing in the audit report. Suppose you find some deviations, some kind of a issue or something. So, it is best that such audit areas or reports identify the risk attached with that. It is not only the surface factor which you need to highlight, but the risk associated and how based that particular risk can be tackled, handled, acted, parked, reviewed, blah, 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 whatever it is. So this is where comes focusing on what matters. Because if you go to the criminal courts also, because it's not always the person is being murdered and he is dead. People also look at, the judges also look at, the machinery also look at what is the motive, who all are involved, in addition, who is the main suspect in the crime, and so on and so forth. So similar way, the same kind of relationship exists between risk-based internal audit plan. What matters is basically, it's not the audit points, it's not the audit exceptions or issues, but also matters what is the risk associated with that and how best the risk can be addressed or attended to, or being parked for further review. And finally, the risk reporting and assurance goes hand in hand. So as we go internal audit plan, when we prepare it out and we work it out and we give the outcome of the plan at the end of a given period, and we also tell what risk we have been addressed by doing this particular audit works. So while doing this, it's very important that like we provide the assurance to the highest level of management or our stakeholder, whosoever are there, for the given assignment or a given those who give the audit plan, what is their expectations and how do we like for example your MD or whatever it is, board gives you an assignment and say do this, and you go and only tell them 1 plus 1 is not equal to 2, it is 1.9 or it is 2.1. It's okay, but this will not take you anywhere further. It will put you wherever you are. What matters is if you give something more and tell them, okay, look, we had a risk-based audit plan. We have looked into the risk, not only the transactional risk, not only the process risk, but we looked at the market risk. We looked into the business risk. We looked into the surround risk, so many things. So the management basically expect you, because as auditors, standard auditors, I think somewhere in the charter, somewhere written, they have a unconditional access to all the informations and right to access, all those things. That's what. Have you read any charter of the audit committee? Not yet? I think we better read, because we should define our scope. So generally it is, for those companies who are appointed by as per the Companies Act and all, they have unconditional access to all informations and all. So if you have this kind of a very important authority, why not give the output in that way also? It's like this, a full toss ball is being given to you, and if you just play or hit something like that for 1 or 2, it is not going to help you out. You have to hit a 6, or at least try to attempt a 6, and that is what it means when we say risk reporting and assurance. Now, as I said earlier, now we are coming to the area of, focusing on what matters. On what matters. As I said, now this is a very standard slide. It's nothing great. Like if you look at the risk, we have divided into the top 8. So if anybody can tell us, what do they think, which is the top priority? Anyone? I'm going in a reverse fashion because you did not have a question after 5 minutes when I asked you. So I'm asking you a question. Looking at this, which is your top priority risk? See, I'll tell you one thing, because focusing on what matters, you have to keep your antennas on. You have to keep on thinking. Nobody will tell you this is what matters. We as auditors must understand or try to think focusing on what matters means we should focus and understand what matters. So this is the first lesson. And whatever is, suppose for this gentleman say risk number 1, somebody may say no, it should be risk number 6. That is perfectly fine. So it is very important for risk-based internal audit plan, start thinking of focusing on what matters in your own assessment, your own, evaluation of the things around you, surround you. Again, back to the questions. Which are the top 1 or 2 risks? Anybody?
ESG is one of the top priorities.
Which one?
ESG, environment, social governance.
Okay. Number 2? Okay, now, yes.
I would like to differ. It's cyber as per the CFE circular just come out. I would say the first of the major risks among the industries right now is the cyber risk.
Okay, I think let me just compliment you. At least the first step you have taken. You started thinking, focusing on what matters. Now let me tell you, all of you are right. All of you are rights, because each one is looking from a different perspective. So what they see is what they see. Correct. So focusing is what matters for the internal auditor. How to focus, it is for him to decide. The focus will be driven by his management, his stakeholders, whosoever he is reporting to, or whosoever is driving him out, correct? So we need to understand. So what matters, we should be focusing on, what matters for us at that point of time. So all of you are right. So nothing is plus minus. There could be so many things. So my objective of asking this question is to understand, focusing on what matters is not that like, I focus, everybody else should focus in this way. No. What is important for a given, jo sahi hai, wo sahi hai. For that given this thing, that kind of a approach should be there. So moving it further. Now, mostly in an internal audit, what happens is, risk-based internal audit one, we focus on key operational risk by and large, unless the audit assignment is such a nature that we do other than the key operational risk. So now, as all of us know, being the finance professional, the entire budget of any organizations or commercial or non-commercial starts with sales and marketing risk. That is a starting point of the existence of this, and then it is followed by your factory operations, then maybe financial management, cyber security, supply chain, and finally regulatory and the compliance risk. So this is what basically I've just taken top half a dozen risks which we need to understand and focus on before we plan the internal audit plan, so that we don't miss the relevant part of it. But again, I'm telling you, now audit is driven by the stakeholders. Now the stakeholders could be board of directors, it could be your operating management, it could be your whatever departmental, sectional, factory heads or whatever. And it's also guided by many a times, special assignments. So the special assignments, I'm taking it out because there the thing is very clear. The objective will say what focus is very clear. This is what is expected output. So you better attend on this. Now, coming to what matters for these key operational risks. So say for example, if you look at sales and marketing, so almost around 10 plus things, correct? These are the elements. So when we discuss risk-based internal audit plan, focus on what matters. We must understand what are the elements are there in front of us, and we have to have a method of selections and rejections to decide what we need to focus on, correct? So there is no right or wrong answer, because in practicalities, if you look at the business, if you look at the management, if you look at the actually when you work, it is not just appearing for a CA final paper and giving the standard answers. Practicalities is much different. I would not say this is easier or it's difficult. That is something different, but it is different. And since you have to attend that, it's like for you, it's do or die, but don't die, do it kind of a scenario. So you cannot go with the attitude which is as fixed as like this will have a fixed solution. There is no fixed recipe. So this is what is the topic says, focusing on what matters. Now see, for a simple sales and marketing, look at those areas. I'm not repeating that, they are on the slide, correct? So very essential to understand focusing on what matters for the internal audit plan is first we must understand what all things are there we need to select, elect and reject. So that is very important for us. It's like this, you will have all the ingredients, but you decide what is going to be your recipe, what is going to be your dish, and accordingly select it out, correct? And that's what you make the plan, risk-based internal audit plan, focusing on what matters. Any choice here? All of you are going to be right, by the way, but still just for my understanding. So I take this learning back home, or not back home, back to my office rather, when I put my thought process there and say, okay, somebody, my fellow colleague said, this is more important, maybe because you are more connected with the markets, because we may not be able to meet each one of you one-to-one, but still, this is what it is. So maybe which is the most important, any one of them in sales and marketing?
Product or service quality. Will it be supply chain disruptions?
Okay. See what happens, why I asked you this question is, we need to understand what is most important at a given point of time. Say for example, when the war, war erupted between say Ukraine and Russia, sometime, somewhere, some two different countries, Azerbaijan, something like this, correct? And this, and something again it happened in the other part of the, areas. Israel and Hamas. So, if we are trying to assess what matters, correct? Focusing on what matters. So, there what matters is, someone said, supply chain risk, correct? So, my internal audit plan, if at all I am trying to review this area, should be at and around based on that. And when I say internal audit plan, it is not after your ship is being caught, it is being blown, it is being, sunk by, some missile. So, when we do the internal audit, in practice, we have a proactive stand. So we define the controls, we define what can go wrong sort of a thing, and then we say how best they are getting monitored by the management. We'll come along with the management with a helping hand to give them assurance, look, this is what we see when we are sitting on a site, we say this can be looked into this and we'll monitor it for you also, and to help you around sort of a thing. So that kind of a thing, and a post facto is much easier to do. Look, ऐसा हो गया, उसको जाना नहीं था, वो गया उधर, उसको blow off कर दिया, correct? So, but what matters focusing on is at what point of time we are looking at this particular aspect. So yes, the supply chain will be very important when the war breaks it out, correct? Isn't it? And similar way, evergreen factor is basically the brand reputation. Something goes wrong with some brand and it's a ever competitive world of like today's, if you look at, and then if you are not careful about the brand reputation, chalta hai approach, in no matter you will lose the market, it will take years to assume that thing, and your very existence depend on the market because of the brand reputation. That could be the one, but that is eternal thing. So the learning here is at what point you are looking into this aspect, you will have to focus on what matters. Next, as I said, the market competition risk. This is one element of this. Now, when we look at any one of those, like what matters, like I have analyzed them into what matters for me as a chief internal auditor or a CAE. If I want to focus on, I'll say what are the triggers, what are the controls to monitor those triggers, and what are the drivers for those triggers. And all these elements should be part of my internal audit plan. So this is again will depend on a given product, given service, given market, given entity or operating entity or whatever. So this is a theory, but I think the overall principle is to understand what matters. We need to have a little bit of thoughtful approach. It cannot be like, it cannot be like with due respect and with apology to the Adhyatmic gurus. It will not come to your mind. There has to be a systematic thought process to decide, focus on what matters. There has to be a change, because believe me, I can share with you, when you go to your MD, when you go to your promoter, when you go to your board of directors, when you go to your chairman of audit committee or other members and all, whatever you say, they may ask you or they will have a question. Sometime the manner in which it will be asked will be different. Sometime it may not be asked. So understand what is the questions in their mind, and you need to understand that and answer those things, not as a paper, but otherwise. And that's what you can get a support and create your own goodwill, create your own standing, even if they have a difference of view with you. Otherwise, gone are those days when auditor says, हमको ऐसा लगता है, लगने से कुछ नहीं होता है. You will have to say why it is so, how it is so, and how it is beneficial for the company's interest as such, or how it is going to be detrimental if it is not attended to. So it is important here, while focusing on what matters, one need to understand. I've just taken this example as a market competition as a risk. Okay, so these are the triggers. I'm not repeating that. Have a look at that for next 10 seconds. Now I'll ask you one different thing. Do you think any one of them is not relevant now? Because I'm getting challenged. I want to challenge myself. Somebody says, no, this is not useless. It is not useful. No, it should be out. So that will be a learning for me. Do let me understand. You have taken 10 seconds, take another 10 seconds. Yes. So difficult question? Huh? Oh, good. Thank you so much. God bless you. Okay, so what matters is, the principle here to learn is focusing on what matters is not so easy, let me tell you, because it is not like a simple, like as I said, writing the exam paper, you have a set portion, you have a set questions, you have a set answer. When you come to the practice, when you go and start working, maybe you are doing your own practice, consulting, or you are working with, company, organization, people, the various dimensions. So you'll have to, your thought process has to be very, like all inclusive. You have to keep on challenging yourself again and again, and be ready either to accept all that comes in, or at least, you'll be able to convince the other person. It's like this, either you get convinced or you convince the other person in a very philosophical way. But I think that is very important, because when I say focusing on what matters. So good. Now the next example. Now for the factory operation is a very key important area of internal audits, correct? Now these are the risks associated. When you say risk-based internal audit plan, for factory operations, focusing on what matters, I'll put all those 8 areas, correct? I'm not going to ask you whether all are relevant or anything which is you think top, because all are equally important. Let me just tell you, because any operation is like driving a vehicle. So you cannot say नहीं चलता है, टायर में हवा कम है तो चलेगा, नहीं वो विंडस्क्रीन नहीं चल रहा है तो चलेगा, नहीं वो कुछ थोड़ा सा ब्रेक नहीं, everything has to be like I would not say perfect, but a level above the acceptable level. So this is what the trigger here. Now focusing what matters in such areas is, one cannot try to do something in lieu of another thing. So that's another aspect which I'm trying to share with you. When we decide, in earlier option, the strategy was you put all the things, sales and marketing I discussed earlier, and then you decide out of those 14 areas, decide what is the topmost at the given point of time. Another approach is for given operations, there is that kind of a thought process is not available to you. You will have to be very clear that all are important and how can I take care of it. So I'm going to focus on all. So that is very important. So don't do this for the sake because we have learned you have to be a selections and elections. No. Whatever strategies you apply is basically depending on what you are trying to look at. Say like you are a doctor, MBBS doctor or MD doctor. Every patient is a different. Even if the disease is same, his treatment may or may not be the same. His assessment may or may not be the same. So you are the doctor of a given organizations or a given process. So apply that process and that is what matters, focusing on what matters. I hope I am trying to be not very lecture oriented. You understand my thought process? Because all these things are there in the net, so I need not tell you. But I must share my thought process with my fellow colleagues and learn from them, or at least try to get their sort of a alignment with okay, what we are doing is right. Moving to the next one, like I have selected now the equipment failure as a risk, correct? The first one. Now, when we say this particular one, focusing on what matters, what are the triggers, what are the controls and what are the drivers, correct? Now if you look at very basic breakdown, productions achievement, quality issues, plant operation, these are the triggers which I need to comply with these tools, and the drivers for that could be, as I said, efficiency to continuous improvement and culture. So this you will have to apply yourself, and I'm not saying you will have a divine knowledge. You will have to go obtain something big, borrow, still whatever it is, but get that kind of a knowledge so that you are in a position to understand what you need to focus, how you need to focus, because though the topic is focusing on what matters, but you must know how to focus, what to focus, when not to focus, and this is what will devise, because there has to be a big strategy in terms of what best can be done. It cannot be just like this, okay, मेरा दिमाग में ये आ गया कर लिया. So ऐसा don't depend on the दिमाग, because nowadays everything is going with it's a very proper structured way. Of course, people will have their emotional intelligence and artificial intelligence, everything is there, but still it has to follow some structures. It cannot be haphazard way. Otherwise, you have to be some Sadguru or Guru. You cannot be a finance manager or an internal auditor. How much time I have got? 7 minutes? Okay. I'll try to speed up now. Now supply chain risk, as I said earlier, these are the various ones. 13, 14 risks are there, correct? Almost 13 risks, not very good number for some of you, but still they are there. So now here you can have a sort of prioritize the things and see what best is there, depending on the time, depending on a given particular like focus and so on and so forth. As someone was saying, data security and privacy, possible, correct? Because if you are entering into a market or you already established player and the competition is there from, say for example, I'll give you an example. There is an established player who has got almost around say 70% of the market. A new player is entering into the market and his supply chain data, his data security and privacy is at a prime most importance. What customers is trying to put, the old one as well as both. So your internal audit plan can focus on this and say this is a risk there. I have to ensure that my data is not getting leaks, all my schemes are not getting leaked out of the market, all my other things which I am planning as a strategy is not leaked to the new entrants and so forth. So there what internal audit should be in a position. So what best I can do to ensure all those kind of a thing. Do you agree with this kind of approach? Don't agree? Okay. See, because let me tell you, because many a time management is so very busy in doing their regular work, they are driving it out, or the players are playing on the field. You being the umpires, first, second, square leg umpire or the third umpire, you need to tell what can be done better or what cannot be done or what was done better, sort of a thing. So this is what coming under the category of focusing on what matters. It need not be always, okay, you tell me, sir, what to do. No, you can always tell. After you have told, this is what I think, from risk-based internal audit plan, this is what I think, we are entering into the market. or rather we are already into the market, the new player has come. Let us guard my data for supply chain, my contractors have kind of, arrangement in such a way that they do not get a competing thing, my data is not leaked, so many things are there. As you go to the business, the opportunities, the thought processes are endless. So focus on those thought processes and get the best out of this. Okay. These are again the triggers, controls and drivers, so I'm not getting too much into this. The time is limited now, last 5 minutes. So cyber security, somebody said. Now this is a topic which is been well discussed, well debated and well researched or whatever it is. I'm not an expert of cyber security, but then this is what matters, what I think of. And for deciding the cyber security risk, focusing on all these elements before you decide your internal audit plan will really help the management. Again, the triggers, controls and drivers. This is my way of doing the things, because I thought, because when you go and talk to the management, the only thing, the limitation is, time. Believe me, you've got 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, you have to make maximum of it. You do not have hours, you do not have, days. And if you're not able to make, probably next time you will not get a chance to be there or something. So please be very clear what you want to focus, how you want to focus. Each and every word you speak, if somebody asks, you can speak for us. So that kind of a preparation will be there, and that is what is very important, focusing on what matters when you decide the internal audit plan, risk-based one. Okay. Now moving to the next one, the financial management risk. Very easy for all of us. I think it requires no mention, correct? Again, the same, like my tabulation, this is what the controls are there. So when I talk about a credit risk and say, what could be the compliance to business growth to globalizations, I'm sure my finance director is going to listen to me, or he will put his input. He says, no, Sudhir, not that way, add this also. So that collaboration has to happen, focusing on what matters. Say for example, any kind of a risk like this. This is an age-old area, focusing on regulatory, statutory compliance risk. Somebody said at the beginning slides, correct? So I'm not much dwelling on this, correct? Now, what is the approach when we say focus on what matters? So this should be the approach. For example, understanding the business, focusing on the enterprise risk. It need not be a transactional risk or a process risk. The risk has to emerge at the top level, which will get cascaded down to the process level, transaction level and so on and so forth. Then develop an internal audit plan, execute the plan and report the result. This is a very standard process. But why I'm trying to dwell on this slide is, we must understand the risk-based internal audit plan. We must focus not in isolation, but in consolidation. That is a lesson. So focusing on what matters is basically consolidated risk at a strategy level. Then you bifurcate down to, whatever its operating areas, process level, transaction and so on and so forth. And this is very important lesson, because many a times I have come across my fellow colleagues, learned colleagues says, no, the risk management is something different. Is a chief risk officer, he will take care of it. The board committee is different, they will take care of it. What I have to do? But when you say risk-based internal audit plan, it is only to do with the process risk, which is not the case. Let me tell you, you must be aware of what are the risks exist at the enterprise risk level and how do they impact your process risk, or at a risk at a much lower level at the process or at a location level. Is this clear? This is very important. So I'll take a stop here for 10 seconds and ask if anybody else has got a different view. Yes? See, this is a question, because when either yes or no you have to answer. If no or if yes, if it's a different view, I'm more eager to understand from you. So I take it as a yes. You don't have any different view, correct? Yes, gentlemen? You raise your hand, I think he's searching you.
Hello, sir.
Yeah.
So my question is, when you include the enterprise risk management framework in your scope of work, does that create an overlap with the enterprise risk team, or is it a complementary approach?
No. What happens, see, as you say, Companies Act 2013, they have called for enterprise, whatever, risk management committee to be a board level committee, and they will follow all this under the chief risk manager and so on and so forth. When I say enterprise risk, understand the risk and how you can configure that for your internal audit plan. Now, certain enterprise risk, they are at such a high level, so you cannot directly go and audit. You understand the componentization of them and try to see the relevant components and plan them into your internal audit plan, correct? So that's what, can you be away from the site? You. So that when you plan it out, suppose you give any example, I will be able to explain you out. Enterprise risk. You understood the point? So this is what is more important, because many a times our fellows, can I request for 2 minutes? I'll just close. So many a times our fellow says, no, this is not my cup of tea, I'm not going to look, which will not happen. Believe me, in today's world, if you are a CFO, Chief Audit Executive, Risk Manager, even MD, everybody has to look at everything in a different fashion and a manner and dimensions. There is nothing called like this is my and this is his, because you are ultimately working in a vehicle which is common for all, correct? So this is what is important. For want of time, I'll just rush it out. Now, as I said, the approach is basically to have the business processes, operating locations, and the system ERPs. And this is what matters for developing the risk-based internal audit plan, which is pretty standard now. Now, this is just a collateral, extension of the earlier slide. Now, understanding the business and the audit universe, it's a geographical listing. You don't say, for example, my domestic business versus my North American business versus my, Far East business versus my African business. No, you have to understand them all and focus on what matters. You have to decide what matters. It need not be domestic business. Company का head office यहाँ पे है, MD यहाँ बैठता है, इसके लिए ऐसा नहीं होता है. Ultimately, what that matters is, all coming under one umbrella. Okay. Now, it is very important that, everything is being run through nowadays ERPs, whichever it is. So it matters, focus on those ERPs which are basically being the backbone of all these support systems. This is just a theory, huh? Okay. I'm rushing it out. Sorry for this, because I got only a minute now. Now, develop an internal audit plan is based on the audit committee, MD, process owners, statutory auditors. We discussed about this, and it all has to be combined. So focus on all the 4 areas at one go matters a lot. Whenever your mother cooks a food, she has focus on कितना नमक डालना है, कितना मिर्ची डालना है, कितना पानी डालना है, कितना धनिया डालना है. So all that focus has to be there to get a tasty dish, and this is what matters for a tasty internal audit plan. Focusing on all the elements which are causing this plan to be developed and devised. And the plan needs to be aligned with the stakeholders' expectation. So focus has to be there. This is just an approach. I'm just rushing it through. And this requires no explanation. You guys are well aware of this. Now, these are 2-3 important things, like stakeholders' mindset, changing environment, and the audit mindset is what we should focus on. I'm not going to the specific areas, a level or level 2 up. And this is a way forward. So when we do a risk-based internal audit plan, these are the 6 areas we should be keeping in mind as a chief audit executive or manager or whosoever you are, to ensure that your risk-based audit plan is being developed in a true test of acceptability if you focus on those way forward areas. This is a slide, and these are the benefits of focusing on those areas, which is also standard. And fine, as I said, when focusing on what we do is done in a very systematic way, very inclusive way, a very detailed way, and very qualitative way, let me tell you, well begun is half done, saying is more applicable to such plan, because once we have a thoughtful plan, this is what is well begun is half done, rather than debating the outcome of the plan at a little later stage. And with that, I'll take your leave. Thank you so much. Happy to answer any questions if you have. Sorry? Yeah, please. Okay. Tell me any strategic risk. I'll tell you how it is connected with the audit. Huh? See, any strategic, as I said, you are. So what happens, as I said, you go to the risk definition. Anything and everything which will affect you adversely is a risk, correct? Likelihood of such event. So competition is a risk. It was there in the initial slides, and there were drivers also. So your plan has to be such a way that, if suppose, as I said, give one example, you are a market, leader. Say one scenario. It could be various. And how do you protect your market positioning there? Correct? Correct? Now, market positioning is not like having a fortune teller, koi aa raha hai kya? That is not a internal audit plan. The thing is, for example, like internal audit plan should take care of this thing. What are the things being done to ensure the market positioning there? Are they sufficient? Are they being done? Or people are taking advantage because there is no other competitor available? But that is not going to happen for long. Correct? So when you discuss with the strategic risk with your marketing directors and so on, you say, how do you do this out and what you think there? And you say you are doing excellently well. What is the confidence you get from where from you get this? You said, or my dealer network is correct, my schemes are correct, they are being timely settled, or there is no 50-50 or adha bar, no corruptions, or we have got a good image, product quality is being maintained. All those things are there, part of your internal audit. You're getting my point? So if you discuss for one risk, believe me, it will take more than a day. Simple thing. But for that, what you need to understand as a finance professional, you must understand, as I said, the entire framework in terms of the business. Now here it's a market is only one sales and marketing, or it is a market competition risk. So one must understand in a position to you can discuss with each and everything. And that's the reason I said the auditors have got unconditional access to the informations and everything. Correct? So they can always say to the marketing director and say, if you have a market position, what is your plan to maintain? How do you do this out? Whether you need to have assurance whether you are doing is right or something more can be done, or just Ram Bharose chal raha hai itne saal se, but there cannot be a guarantee for the future. You're getting my point? So all those things will come in. Got it? So I think, see, I'm telling you because these questions I had, when initially around say 20-25 years back when I was a newcomer, relatively new. अरे ये हमारा काम ऐसा नहीं होता है. When you go to the little hub, there is nothing हमारा तुम्हारा. सब तुम्हारा है और तुम सबके हो. Simple. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you, Sudhir sir, for